great to have you here. I've been hearing about all the different schools you're from. Welcome to the Cabinet Room. This is where the British Cabinet has been meeting for quite a long time. There's a picture of, oh actually they've moved him. Normally Walpole, who's up there, was the first Prime Minister to live here. And the Prime Ministers have been sitting here for a few hundred years. And the new addition is sometimes you can see cat hairs, because Larry the cat quite likes perching right here, but not during Cabinet meetings, I hasten to add. Anyway, looking forward to answer your questions. I gather you've been warming up on Ed Miliband and Nick Clegg, so you're ready to give me a real pasting, if you've been practising with them.
I'm Maisie from Ribblesdale School. Can you tell me in one sentence what the Conservatives stand for?
In one sentence, the Conservatives stand for helping people make the most of themselves in a country that is free, strong, prosperous and independent.
Do I address you with Mr. Cameron?
You can call me David, you can call me whatever you like.
Okay. Mr. Cameron. Hi, I'm Will from Corby Business Academy. The funding cut decisions made by your government have affected my county, cutting the number of streetlights turned on, putting our safety in jeopardy and giving the locals less confidence to go out at night. Why do you have to cut so much money from the county council budgets? Well,
it's a difficult question. We have had to make cuts because the problem we have one of the problems we have in this country is we've got a huge deficit, like a huge overdraft. We're spending much more money than we're getting back in taxes. And that means we have to borrow the money. And the more we borrow, the more your generation, when you leave school and go and work, the more your generation will have to pay back. So this government's come in and said, look, we're going to have to take some difficult decisions. We've got to make some spending reductions. We've tried to protect the things that matter the most, so the per pupil funding, the money that goes with every pupil in every school is not being cut. The health service isn't being cut. We're actually increasing money going to the health service. And the money we give to the poorest people in the world to make sure they get vaccines and immunisation so they don't die of diseases that we would never die of, we haven't cut that. But we have cut some of the money going to local government. So local governments had to make some difficult decisions. It's for them to decide how to make those reductions. Many councils have been able to cut down on bureaucracy and back office costs rather than on frontline services, and we encourage them to do that.
We heard from Ed Miliband earlier that you are making your decisions kind of like cutting quite fast with quite a lot amount of money.
Well, he has a different view. He thinks that you can put off making these spending reductions, and I think that's very dangerous because the more you borrow, the more your debts mount up. The more the debts mount up, the more the rest of the world might start thinking, hold on a second, I'm not going to lend you any money anymore. And if you look around Europe and you look at what's happening in countries like Greece, you can see the danger. If people don't think you've got a plan to pay back your debts, your interest rates go up. And if your interest rates go up, then every family that's paying a mortgage on their home, for every 1% increase in mortgage rates, they could be paying an extra £1,000 a year. So I think it is important to have a plan to deal with your debts. Difficult though it may be, it's always easier to put off to tomorrow decisions that need to be made today, but in politics, as in life, it's better to make those decisions.
So you feel that if you kind of like say get all the debt out the way as soon as you can, then it will give us an easier future?
I think it will give us a better future. We're not getting all the debt out the way that quickly. All we're trying to do is reduce the size of the overdraft. We're still borrowing money this year. We'll still be borrowing money next year. But under Mr. Miliband's plans, we'd be borrowing even more money, the debts would mount up even faster, and we'd have this risk on our interest rates. So we think we've got a reasonable plan for paying down the overdraft, and that's enabling us to keep the interest rates low at the same time. Now, of course, we've got to do more to try and get the economy growing and get the jobs coming, and that's absolutely vital, and I'm sure that's what the budget will be about when the Chancellor stands up and gives it in a couple of weeks' time.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
I'm Sophie from St Ilo's High School. Your phrase, we're all in it together, is something that we hear a lot. Soon I'll be working in 5 years and I'll be paying taxes. Why should I have to pay taxes for a problem that I didn't create?
Well, I think the point is well made, which is why we've got to start dealing with these debts now. We shouldn't put them all off to future generations. But the fact is, we have these debts as a country. We've had debts for a long time. It's just in recent years the annual overdraft has got very big. So we're trying to deal with them so it isn't just your generation that is having to deal with them. I want to make sure that by the time you're getting into the job market, actually the economy is growing properly. We haven't got that annual overdraft, and so as the economy grows, we should be sharing that money between some extra money going on public spending, but some money going back to the people who work hard and who earn it by trying to keep their taxes down. So as you get to the job market, I hope that's what we'll be doing.
Hello, Mr. Cameron. I'm Chris from Lagan College.
Hi, Chris.
Many people in Northern Ireland, including me, feel that they have little to no benefit from the Olympics and that funding health and education should take priority over such a luxury event. What stance do you and your party take on this opinion?
Well, I think health and education are fantastically important, and that's why we haven't cut health spending. We're growing it every year, and the per pupil funding that we're responsible for in the UK government is not being cut. But I think the Olympics do benefit the whole country. I mean, obviously, it has a bigger direct benefit in London than it does in Northern Ireland, but I think the Olympics benefit the whole country in lots of ways. First of all, there have been huge amounts of contracts to businesses to help build the Olympic site, and they've gone to companies all over the country, including Northern Ireland. And secondly, I hope that the Olympics can give us quite a legacy of encouraging young people, and older people too, to get involved in sport and in exercise and in competitions. And I think the signs are pretty good on that front, that every time you see Britain succeed in an Olympic sport, whether it's cycling or rowing or swimming, you actually see a big uptick in people's interest in that. So I think it can be quite inspiring, and I hope it can inspire young people in Northern Ireland too.
Okay, so do you feel that those contracts will make up for the money coming out of the people of Northern Ireland's pockets in their taxes?
There's no doubt. Look, it is expensive to hold the Olympic Games. I cannot deny that. It's a lot of money gets spent on the venues of the stadium, the aquatic centre, the velodrome. I think there are two big benefits though. One is almost all of the things that have been built have got a legacy use. So that cycling, that aquatic centre will go on being used. That cycling centre will go on being used. We've secured the future. But also, as I say, I think the real benefit is the lift it can give to sport, sporting excellence, sporting activity amongst young people. And we've really got to make sure that extends across the country. One of the things we've done, for instance, is the school games, which is going to be held in the Olympic site this summer. And schools are taking part from across the United Kingdom in that project, which I think is a good example of how you make sure we try and get value for money out of what I accept is an expensive thing.
My name's Khadija and I come from Copeland Community School in Brent. My school is an awful place. Cracks in the walls are covered by paper, and last week my library flooded out. We thought we were going to get money from the government. What are you willing to do for our school and many others?
Okay. Well, we are going to spend money on new capital, new buildings for schools. We put money in the budget. It's actually as much money, more money in fact, than the last government spent in its first 2 terms. So the money's there. There's a process where schools have to bid for that money, but it sounds like yours is quite a deserving case, and maybe I need to go away and have a look at your particular school, particular borough, and see what the plans are, because there is, as I've said, we haven't cut the per pupil funding, which is absolutely vital, because that's the running cost of the schools, and we have made available, I think it's around £15 billion of capital spending over the Parliament for schools, and we need to make sure that if there are needy cases like yours, we really have a look at them.
Hi, I'm Jennifer and I'm from Bannockburn High School. Mr Cameron, if Scotland votes no to independence, what further powers would you be prepared to give to the Scottish Parliament?
Well, I think it's a discussion to have with the Scottish people, and indeed it's a discussion we ought to have in the whole of the family of the United Kingdom, because to me the United Kingdom is like a family, and I hope we don't break up. But I think before we have that discussion, I think we do need to sort of answer the question, does Scotland want to stay in the United Kingdom, or does it want to separate itself and leave? Now, Scotland voted for the Scottish National Party to be its government in Scotland. They had a pledge to hold a referendum on independence. I think we ought to let them hold that referendum, but a simple question, do you want to stay or do you want to leave? I very much hope Scotland will vote to stay. After we've settled that question, then I think we can look, if people want to, at what further powers could be devolved and how best to make our United Kingdom, our devolved United Kingdom, to work. I don't have particular proposals, but we're just passing a big devolution bill at the moment that gives quite a lot of tax powers to the Scottish Parliament. Perhaps there are other things we can do in that area.
The cuts to the youth service don't only affect me and my future, but my parents as well, because they're both youth workers. So why, when there are over 1 million young people unemployed in the UK, are you cutting a service that helps young people get into work?
We had to make difficult decisions on spending, and we thought the most important thing was that the per pupil money going to the schools was maintained, and that has meant that some local authorities have had to make difficult decisions in youth services. What I find in my local area is that there often been able to partner with voluntary bodies and with people in the community to run those youth services, and in some cases to run extra youth services. So it is difficult. I'm not going to pretend that there's easy answers to this, but I think we can have good youth provision with the money that is made available, but it will involve people from the community and the voluntary sector stepping forward and making sure we get good value for money.
Hi, I'm Vanjie, I'm from Bannockburn. English students need to pay to go to university in Scotland, whereas EU and Scottish students can go there for free. Do you feel this is fair?
Well, I think we all have to make our own decisions. That's the thing about devolution, and the Scots Parliament has made their decision to keep university education free. We've made our decision in the Westminster Parliament for English students that there'll be tuition fees. I happen to think, but it's a matter for the Scottish people to decide, I happen to think that over time everyone will move to a model of some sort of tuition fees, because if we want universities to be good, and you'll all want to go to good universities, well-funded universities as you leave school, if you want them to be good, they need to have money. And if they can't get money from the taxpayer because we've got such bad debts and deficits, then it makes sense to ask successful graduates to pay for that university education. So I think over time, all parts of the United Kingdom, in fact, all parts of Europe will realise that actually asking successful graduates to pay for universities is a better way of doing things. But in the meantime, it's part of devolution. If the Scots want to take some different decisions, they can, and they have.
But do you think it's fair that people who are living on the borders between Scotland and England and who are going to a Scottish school but live in England can't go to Scotland, like a university in Scotland, for free?
It's a consequence of devolution. If you want to have a Scottish Parliament that can make different decisions, then clearly you're always going to have things which are different one side of the border to the other side of the border. So it clearly affects people, but it's a consequence of devolution. And I think the country wanted devolution, and Scotland wanted devolution and wanted to have its own Parliament.
I'm Poppy from Ribblesdale School. My mum's a nurse and she's concerned about the changes to the NHS, as am I. We also saw a demonstration last night outside our hotel against the proposed changes. Why is it that you're making these changes that the doctors and nurses don't agree with?
Well, I think I'm making the changes because I think they're right for the future of the health service, and there are lots of doctors who do believe that they're the right changes, particularly general practitioners, GPs, who are in many ways going to be leading these changes. Because what we're doing in very simple terms is trying to get rid of a lot of the bureaucracy in the NHS, the primary care trusts and the strategic health authorities and all these organisations, and instead give the money directly to the doctors who are going to be making the decisions on behalf of their patients. And so I think the GPs, many of them are very enthusiastic about what is going to happen in the health service. I think it'll be less bureaucratic. I think there'll be more choice for patients, more decisions made by doctors, and also more of what a lot of people in the health service want to see, which is more treatment at home and in the community rather than in hospital, more emphasis on prevention. Why am I doing all these things when I know they're clearly not that popular? I happen to think they're right. I think that because of our ageing population, because of all the new treatments and drugs, if we don't change the way we do the health service, I think there's a real danger it wouldn't be able to cope with the pressure in future. So sometimes in politics you have to do things that you believe are right, that aren't very popular at the time, but you really think are necessary for a good, free National Health Service for the future.
Thank you.
Do you want to explain to the Prime Minister why you were worried about it?
Yeah, because it's my mum's job.
Yeah. Well,
And
she's a nurse
Yeah.
Is she in a hospital or in the community?
she's a
or-
district nurse.
District nurse.
Yeah.
I think the reforms will actually be quite good for district nurses, because I think we're going to see more things, as I said, done outside hospital. If you think about what the health service is really about, it's about the best free treatment to keep you well and to make sure you don't get in the first place. So I think a lot more preventative medicine, a lot of work by district nurses to keep people in their homes. So I hope that your mum will be very busy in the new world.
Hi, I'm Lamice and I'm from St Tyler's High School, which is in Cardiff. Currently, youth unemployment is at a record high and is likely to increase by the time I start looking for a job. What are you doing to get young people back into work?
Well, the most important thing is we've got to get the economy growing. I mean, at the moment what's happening is there are more jobs coming in the private sector, but that is not growing fast enough to make up for the fact that we're losing jobs in the public sector because of the inevitable consequences of having to reduce public spending. So we need to keep the interest rates low, we need to cut business taxes, we need to help people with apprenticeships, we need to make sure we're selling to the rest of the world. We've got to get the big British economy moving again. But there are specific things we need to do to help young people, because young people can be at a disadvantage because young people who are unemployed often have never had a job before, so they don't have that experience to trade off. So I think one of the biggest things we can do is this work experience programme, where we're encouraging companies to take young people on as work experience. The evidence so far, I think 30,000 people have done it, and about half of them have ended up with a job at the end. I think it's a very good way of giving young people a leg up into a job, which is what I want for all young people in our country.
Do you agree that it's unfair that one man can have so much power over the media, and that therefore more regulation needs to be put in place to maintain impartiality in the media?
As well as being competition, you need what's called plurality. You need to make sure there's a number of different people who are providing our media. There is a problem, which is, it's interesting, we're here with the BBC. The biggest media organisation in the country is the BBC. It's massive. It's brilliant. I think it's fantastic. I'm a fan of the licence fee. I think we get very good value from it. But we need to work out how we make sure there's a varied media and lots of different media owners at the same time as not over-favouring the BBC. But it's a complicated one, and I'm hoping Judge Leveson is going to come up with the answers for me.
In a few years' time, I will need a job, and though I understand immigration can create jobs, I feel that British people should be given opportunities. What is the government's plans to restrict immigration?
Well, I think it is important that we control immigration, because I think that if you have too much immigration, you can put a lot of pressure on public services, healthcare, education and such like. But I think that the real answer to your question, how do we make sure there are opportunities for British people in the labour market and for British-born people in the labour market, the real key there is to reform not just our education system and make sure it's giving you a good education, but also to reform our welfare system. One of the reasons why immigration's been so high is actually when the economy was growing in Britain, we had a lot of people stuck on welfare rather than working, and the jobs went to people who chose to come in and work here. So I don't think we should turn around and blame them for doing that. It's a perfectly rational thing to want to come to Britain and get a job. But if we want to get this right, we need to both control immigration for the reason I gave, but also reform welfare so that I think it's about 5 million people on out-of-work benefits in the UK are able to get those jobs that we do create. So I see welfare and immigration as two sides of the same coin.
I'm Danny from Copeland Community School in Wembley, and I live in Brent, and I would like to know why there are youths not joining youth clubs and getting involved with the community, but instead of doing this, they're joining gangs. What are you doing to stop this?
I think it's a really serious problem, Danny, and I wish I had all the answers. I think trying to fight the gang culture in our big cities is really important.
But
I think
what are you doing?
Well, I'm going to try and answer that. I mean, I think we've got to make sure there are opportunities for young people to do things instead of going into gangs. So one of the things we're pioneering is this thing called National Citizen Service, which is the idea of every 16-year-old having the opportunity to do voluntary service, to travel to a different part of the country, to prepare themselves for adulthood. I think that's a good idea. I think after-school clubs, what happens at school is vital. I think we need to do more to help families. Sometimes I think people look to the gang because they haven't had the support and love and help at home. So there's no one single answer. I've had some of the biggest experts in the world from America come over to talk about gangs. There's no one answer. Part of it is families, part's school, part is voluntary service, and there's also a bit of policing too. There's no doubt in my mind the place in the country where we tackled gangs the best was in Glasgow, where there was a very tough police response to gang members and gang-related violence and crime. And I think there's a bit of tough stuff we need to do as well as the more gentle stuff.
But what about safety, as in, like, say, me walking home from school one day and getting mugged or robbed?
Well, our streets aren't safe enough, and I think we need to have very visible police presence. I think if we look in London, in spite of the fact we've had to make difficult spending reductions, actually the police really are working hard to try and cut the back office costs and make sure they're out on the streets. And I think there's still more we can do. You know, we've got 43 police forces across the country. I'm sure there's more they can do to, they've all got a lot of different cars, a lot of different equipment. I think there's much more we can do to combine their back offices and combine their services and try and make sure they really focus on having the police out on the streets so you feel safe when you walk home.
In the film Love Actually, Hugh Grant plays the Prime Minister and dances around Downing Street to the song Jump. Have you ever been tempted to do this?
Not in the bit of Downing Street where he did that. That's just above here, in what's called the State Rooms. And I had the person who produced that film, Richard Curtis, was here, and I said, where did you film it? And they said, no, they didn't. They built a set like Downing Street. So I showed him around the rooms, but no, I've never danced in the State Rooms in Downing Street. I live in a little flat, a very nice flat, actually above number 11 Downing Street, up there. But what I get up to, and that's private.
I read online that you're a big fan of Angry Birds, and I was just wondering how good are you at it, and have you completed all the levels?
I have completed quite a lot of the levels. Someone told me about it, and I was given an iPad, and so I downloaded it, and my children got interested in it, and it is quite addictive. Because once you've done one layer, you kind of want to do the next one, and then the next thing you know. But I want to reassure you, I don't spend a huge amount of time doing this, but sometimes when you're on long trips, I often have to fly to Afghanistan or fly to Russia, or next week I'm going to America. And sometimes when you're on these long flights, when you've done all your work and you've had all your conversations and you've prepared all your speeches, you need something to relax with. So sometimes I watch a bit of television on the iPad, and sometimes I play a bit of Angry Birds, but I don't seem to have much left to do.
I advise you to get Temple Run.
Temple Run, right.
Recently I heard that you rode Rebecca Brooks's horse. Did you enjoy that, and do you often ride horses?
I haven't. I've ridden a horse a couple of times since the election, but I haven't had a lot of time for it recently. I like riding. I think it's a lovely way to enjoy the countryside. I was taught to ride when I was young. I stopped then, and I took up again when I was a bit older, and I love doing it, but I haven't had much time for it recently.
Does your mum still tell you what to do?
Does my mum still tell me what to do? Sometimes. I talk to her quite often. I was on the phone to her last night about something, but she doesn't tell me what to do. She sometimes makes a few gentle suggestions and hints, you know, the way that mums do, and you sort of get the message without having to be told absolutely what to do. But I think I've been very lucky to have such a loving mum who's still around to give me a few tips and hints.
You can all come from that side. Just gather around the Prime Minister this side. One very quick photograph.
Nice to see you. Thank you very much.